Welcome to the Friendly Podcast Guide, sorting through podcasts so you don't have to. I'm Andy Smiley, and I want to help you discover the right podcast without having to listen to an entire episode. Now, let's talk podcasts. Sometimes I have a hard time taking myself seriously and having the confidence to take my business to the next level. But this week's podcast has helped me move past all of that in a unique way. Ben Wong is the host of Young Trep, and he is such an inspiration to me. He is 16 years old and is already confidently taking on the business world. His podcast helps other kids and teens who want to try their hand at business and helps them realize their potential. Here is the show's description. Benjamin Wong, entrepreneur and visionary, interviews some of the world's greatest entrepreneurs from a teenager's perspective to empower and inspire today's generation of youth to be equipped for tomorrow's future. The length of each episode is around 30 minutes. Ben has currently paused making new episodes, but plans to start back up very soon. So this gives you time to go through his backlog of episodes and get caught up. Before we learn more about the vibe of the show, we're going to take a quick break to talk about Olive & June nail polish. The gift-giving season is upon us, and I know how hard it can be to find the perfect gift for your loved ones. Well, let me make your life a little bit easier. You should gift the nail painters in your life with a mani or pedi system from Olive & June. I use their mani system, and my nail polish will stay on for a week with no chipping. It brings me so much joy every time I look at my nails with these fun colors, and you can give that same joy to your loved ones. You can get 20% off a mani or pedi system by using the affiliate link in the show notes. Now we get to hear from Ben about how this podcast isn't even his first podcast, and he's only 16 years old. Okay, everybody, a quick note. I apologize in advance that the audio quality for this interview isn't the best, but I promise what Ben says is worth listening to through the imperfections. Ben, will you introduce yourself to my audience?
Yep. Hey, everyone. I'm Ben Wong. I'm a kid podcaster. I'm 16 years old, also an entrepreneur and philanthropist. I run a podcast called Young Trep, where I interview entrepreneurs, celebrities, athletes, whoever I feel would have some cool advice for kids.
I love it. I love that you have a podcast and you're 16. I feel like I wish I would have had a podcast when I was that young. That would be so fun.
Oh, yeah. It's really the right time. Like when I first got into podcasting was 2018, and it was a brand new kind of industry at that time. And it was kind of a perfect prelude to be able to represent things that I was interested in at the time and be able to get more kids involved. So it just kind of worked out. Perfect timing.
I love that. So I feel like you were getting into it, but can you help me understand why you wanted to start a podcast?
So originally, when I started a podcast, it was called Kid CEO. And the idea was I was really into investing, stock trading at the time. And I wanted to have a way to be able to communicate this passion with others. So I would talk to kids at school and they would be like, hey, how can I do this too? Of course, I was 12 years old, made it seem, I just made all this money, $20, but I wanted to be able to communicate this in a way that I could have one central place that had everything you need to know about investing, and I could just refer people to that. And it was also my mom's idea with using podcasting versus, a blog or social media.
Definitely. That's super cool. I love it. And I feel like a podcast is really a good resource for people. And I feel like it's an easy way to get information out and you get to control it. I feel like with social media, you don't always know what the algorithm is going to do or whatever. I feel like podcasts are just a really solid way to get information out and get your message out there. I love that.
I agree.
What do you want people or kids, I guess, to get out of your podcast?
Every episode I'll bring in a guest and they all have a slightly different angle, whether it's a sleep coach or an entrepreneur or a speaking coach or, whoever's on, athlete. They'll all have a slightly different angle and a different message that they want to communicate. And that's human. That's natural human order.
Sure.
But I think the general idea behind the entire podcast is that it's never too early to make a difference in your world, in an industry, in a passion. That's the central idea. Everyone will come in with some sort of form of that, whether it's, make sure to follow your dreams or, whatever. There's many different ways of saying that. But I
Sure.
think the central idea is taking it a step further with kids and applying everything that these people have said into the form of kids in the message of it's never too early to be able to fill in the blanks, follow your dreams, make a difference in their community.
That is absolutely fantastic. So, how would you describe the vibe of your show? I feel like we've touched on it, but like, what words would you describe your show, the vibe of your show with?
That's a tough one because it's evolved so much over
Mm.
time. From when it started, it was a very episodic, very harmonious,
Mm.
very cinematic is the perfect word.
Oh,
When I
okay, okay.
first started, it was very cinematic. I put a lot of time into music, into editing. Everything was perfectly crafted. There wasn't a second that was unaccounted for.
Sure.
Whereas now it's a lot more natural and free flowing. I wouldn't
Okay.
say either one's better or worse, but it's a lot more take it as we go, unedited, not simplifying anything, not over glorifying anything, but just, and we edit a little bit, but just releasing the raw content and allowing people to make their own interpretations and being able to allow people to understand each episode in their own separate way, which I think has a beauty in it as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel like you said, both are good, just have different strengths and weaknesses. And
Yeah.
that's great. Okay, so I'm going to ask you what your favorite episode is in a second. But first, can you tell me where can people find you?
Yes. So they can go to my website, benjaminwong.co. They can find me on Instagram at official Benjamin Wong or Twitter, Ben Wong with a 3 instead of an E.
Okay, fabulous. And okay, so now tell me, what is your favorite episode or couple of episodes? Because I know it's hard to choose just one.
Yeah, exactly. I think I always go back to this one episode I had with a guy named Evan Carmichael. He's a motivational YouTuber. He's made a big name for himself on YouTube. And his episode, I think, I was the most nervous for, but it was kind of the perfect everything. I've had some guests that are maybe more famous or more, successful, but I mean that successful was a hard one, but maybe more famous, right? And but I'll only have like 5 to 10 minutes with them. Whereas the Evan Carmichael episode, I had the perfect amount of everything. He himself, of course, came with so much fire and content, um, mixed with the perfect amount of time. And I feel like that episode taught me a lot, both from a guest standpoint and from a host standpoint. It taught me so much about how to run a podcast, from the way his team interacted with me. So yeah, I would say that one, not only for the finished result, which was an amazing episode that I always point people towards as the first episode they should listen to, but it also taught me so much.
That is so cool. I think that people don't understand all of the back end stuff, right? That goes into making a podcast. Yeah. And so I love that your guest not only helped you make a good finished product, but also taught you how to be a better host. That's super cool. Okay. So most of my listeners are moms. So I always ask this question, is your podcast okay for little ears?
Yeah, 100%. And I think there are a lot of episodes that might have subjects that are complex, not mature subjects by any means, but complex things. We talk about the science behind sleep. And so it's safe for little ears, of course. And I think it's also a very smart thing that a lot of parents have told me, in that they listen to it with their kids, so the kids can ask questions about things that they listen to. And there are, of course, episodes that are easier to understand than others. If for little ears, I would highly recommend starting from the very beginning, because generally I think as the show went on, it got a little bit more complex. So okay. I would say definitely start at the beginning until it becomes too complex. But and that's different for every kid. But start at the beginning. There's definitely so much really, really cool kid-friendly content, and all of it's good, but especially the beginning part.
Definitely. Well, and I feel like what I've realized is, just because a podcast is kid ear friendly, like, you're not talking about drugs and sex and like swearing all the time, that doesn't mean that like it's not going to go right over the kid's head, right? Like, because my oldest is 5, so it's not like he's ready to be a young entrepreneur yet, but it's nice to know that I can still listen to your podcast like around him and not be worried about him hearing something that I don't want him to hear. You know what I mean? So that's perfect.
And if he does hear something and get curious about entrepreneurship or sleep health, all the greater.
Exactly. Yes. I feel like that is one of the fun parts about podcasts is if I'm listening in the car or something and they hear, I don't know, if I'm listening to a history podcast and they're like, wait, who was that guy? I'll like pause it and talk to them about it. And then they can be excited about something that they probably had no idea they could get excited about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much. I am so excited for my listeners to be introduced to you and hopefully introduce their kids to the Young Trep, Ben, and we can have a bunch of new young entrepreneurs out there.
That's the goal.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you know a teen or their parents who could use Young Trep in their life, will you share this episode with them? And if you need a gift for the nail polish lovers in your life, use my affiliate link to get 20% off a mani or pedi system for them. Talk to you soon.